Iwi katoa na mihi kia koutou I rangatira mā Sustainable Summits tēnei koutou. Iti iwi, tōna ko, tēnā rau, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, I'm Lou Sanson, the Director General of Department of Conservation in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I look after 30% of New Zealand, the fabulous Southern Alps where I grew up in. And for 11 years I ran the New Zealand Antarctic program and feel very privileged to have taken Sir Edmund Hillary there on his last two visits. First, I'd like to acknowledge the tragic news this morning of the number of COVID cases that are occurring in Sagarmatha National Park, where this conference was to be held, and the record numbers at Everest Base Camp this year, 400 climbers, Pemba Sherpa from Pangboche, and the COVID outbreaks now happening right along that trail through Lukla and through Namche Bazaar. And just this absolute tragedy as people pour back into the mountains but take this terrible disease with them into these incredible communities. I also want to acknowledge the tragedy of Cave Creek. It's now 25 years on from when 14 people died on a viewing platform constructed by Department of Conservation, and we met with the families. We recognised that incredible tragedy, New Zealand's greatest ever outdoor tragedy, and our role in that, which actually did lead by the New Zealand government to $1 billion of investment in visitor facilities in our Southern Alps and in the North Island, and this incredible visitor asset that New Zealand now has. I'd like to start by saying that COVID has ended up being an incredible opportunity for our mountains in New Zealand, and New Zealand only locked down for 5 weeks, and when we unlocked, thousands and thousands of people came out into nature. Some of the polling we've recently done has indicated 75% of New Zealand's 5 million people have actually been out in nature, and small towns in our mountains like Reefton, Karamea, Twizel have just seen record numbers of cyclists, of people out in the backcountry. Just this week, our Milford track, our most famous track, sold out in 15 minutes, just showing this huge love affair that New Zealanders are now having with nature, and something that's actually ended up being a massive opportunity for us to connect with people, to capture hearts and minds about the biodiversity loss we face, about getting people out there helping us with conservation in our mountains. We've also seen we've lost 3.8 million visitors, and places like Milford Sound, Franz and Fox Glacier, Aoraki have seen 80% declines. Yet small towns with cycleways have seen 50% increases, so it's a pretty weird dynamic. And we also got a massive opportunity from the New Zealand government, because in lockdown we were able to develop a proposal for the government because we saw an economic recession. We called it Jobs for Nature. And the government put in $1.3 billion, and we now have an ambition to employ 11,000 people in nature, training them in new skills. So when the tourists come back to New Zealand, we will see large areas of the Mackenzie Basin free of wilding pines, wallabies brought back, predator-free New Zealand, and water restored. And this is the biggest ever investment in our environment in New Zealand history as a result of COVID. Some other interesting things we're seeing: Pinnacle's Hut near Auckland has been occupying. Another interesting feature has been Pinnacle's Hut in the Coromandel has seen 96 occupancy. Another interesting fact has been Pinnacle's Hut in the Coromandel has seen 96% occupancy since we came out of lockdown. And just before Christmas last year, the government announced New Zealand's newest park, Tutaraki Whānau Drylands. And Tutaraki Whānau was the Maori god who carved out South Island, Te Wahi Panamu, and he chipped away and started in the south in Preservation Sound and moved his way up through Dusky Sound, and he perfected his carving at Pio Milford Sound, and all those lakes, the southern lakes of Tekapo and Pilkaki against that vista of Aoraki Mount Cook is where he's mastered his ability to chip out lakes. And this is New Zealand's newest park, Tutaraki Whanoa Drylands Park, done with Defence, with Land Information New Zealand and the farmers and Maori in that community. The other great gift we are having for our mountain community and people that work in mountains is our ambition for predator-free New Zealand, and we're the only country in the world that set this ambition. And in the spectacular mountains of Southwestland and the Perth and the valleys, we've now got 12,000 hectares of land completely free of predators, of rats, stoats, possums. And we're using the alpine glaciers and the fast-flowing rivers of the west coast as barriers. And we're putting more money in to take that further south into Westland National Park. And we've got so much detection system there with artificial intelligence, infrared traps, that we can virtually detect any animal that comes into that area. And we've seen this explosion in care, our alpine parrot, our rock wren, and the ability to do this with our alpine hunting community that work on the Himalayan tar. Predator-free New Zealand now has 130 million being spent a year, over 100,000 volunteers working on it, as we scale up these peninsulas, these mountain environments, and go further and further into Southwestern to restore that area and bring back some of our most precious birds like kaka and mohua. The other big challenge for Aotearoa is clearly climate change, and last year we had a record warming event in the Tasman Sea, and that leads to massive rainfall events, 1,000 millimetres plus. We've never seen these sorts of rainfall events, and pretty much destroyed all the visitor facilities we had at Fox Glacier the previous year. And last year we lost Milford Track, the Hollyford Track. We lost a hut on the Greenstone Caples. And we're now having to cope with these massive flood events. We've just had one in Christchurch. And we're having to think how we invest in our New Zealand mountains to cope with these unprecedented flood events. The recession of the glaciers is also making it more difficult to put in huts, visitor facilities, as the ice recedes, and it's been receding at record rates since 2008. 2008 was the year that the sea temperature switched in the Tasman Sea, and years of acceleration of our glaciers have now led to record decline. And as the glaciers move back, we're getting very steep faces, rock falls, a lot more hazards that we have to manage. There was also the tragedy of Whakaari White Island and the deaths that we had there with the cruise ship, and becoming much more alert to the volcanic hazards that exist in New Zealand. So as well as managing the flood hazards, we have to be completely on top of volcanic hazards after that incredible tragedy at Whakaari White Island. We've also seen two of New Zealand's largest ever fires near Araki at Oho and Pukaki, where we lost 38 million in houses as fire in some of the strongest easterly winds we've ever seen tore through tussock lands and wilding pines, and some of the hottest fires we've ever experienced, equivalent to Australian bushfires. So these are all new phenomenon for us in terms of managing these alpine landscapes. Finally, I'd like to finish by applauding the government and some of the tourism leaders that's put together to reset New Zealand tourism. Previous to COVID, my entire 8 years as Director General, I've been facing between 4 and 10% annual growth in tourism. We were barely keeping up. We were constantly building car parks, new toilets, and we've got this magic place now. We've got hundreds of thousands of Kiwis out there and actually getting ready for when our borders do open. And already the government is actually taking some very strong moves about regulating all our camper vans to have toilets in them. It is taking a strong leadership role on concessions and natural quiet. We just can't keep growing tourism like we were and subsidising the tourism industry in New Zealand to what we were. We'll be bringing back the international visitor levy, and that will pay for conservation in New Zealand. It will pay for visitors to enjoy these incredible landscapes. So I'm sorry that we can't meet together. I know we've been a a regular contributor to Sustainable Summits and the work that Lisa and Dave Bamford do on this incredible resource, and our love with the mountains of the world. We can't be with you, but we're there in spirit, and Narira tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. With Predator Free New Zealand, probably our most iconic project is one we've done with Iwi Whānau Hapu, our Māori treaty partner in New Zealand. And that is to look at Mount Taranaki with the 8 iwi there in terms of our plan to take that monga completely predator free. And we're enjoying the relationship we have with them, with philanthropy, with businesses in Taranaki, to take that dramatic volcano and take a halo and take it out into those landscapes. So we've got healthy nature, healthy people, healthy water, teeming with birds, and we've got our treaty partner, Māori, at the heart of what we do.